Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video, and Blizzard has officially released their first look at how player housing is going to work in Midnight. We're going to be getting into all the nuts and bolts, the nitty-gritty, because I think this is a really important feature for a lot of players. They are praying that this is not going to suck. They are praying that it's not going to be bad, and they are praying that it's not just going to be Garrison's 2.0. So let's see if they manage to hit the nail on the head with it in this post. And if you want to make sure you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. The construction of the new housing system in Azeroth is underway, and we are taking you behind the scenes to give you an early look at what the housing development team has been working on. Watch your step and don't mind the dust. Hard hats are not required. Welcome home, adventurers. We are excited to kick off our first look at housing in World of Warcraft and share some of our philosophies and plans for this new feature with you. First up, we're focusing on our high-level design pillars for housing, as well as talking about a few key areas of housing as we lay the foundation for future discussions. We have lots to cover, so let's jump in. Fortifying housing with pillars. When developing such a large new feature, it's useful to start by first defining its pillars. They help the development team get on the same page before we start building, as well as providing a guiding light when making decisions and identifying priorities. It's important to note that while these pillars are a broad in scope by their nature, they aren't all-encompassing. Just because something isn't mentioned in a pillar doesn't mean it's not important or isn't part of the feature. Our 3 pillars for player housing. They've got a nice little graphic here of what like a little inside of an orc house could look, with tons of little flanks of meat just hanging over everything there. So I'm definitely think there's going to be some kind of components towards races for these housings effects. Boundless self-expression. Our highest priority is to allow players to build a house that shows off their own personal tastes or their warbands, acts as a desired backdrop for role-playing, or just allows players to create something in a flight of fancy. The full set should be easy. What do they mean by role-playing? Are people going to be going to the house now instead of the Goldshire Inn basement? Is that what's happening? The tool set should be easy enough for someone with no 3D experience to be comfortable with and use successfully. I mean, there's been tons of games of just putting items down in a building. Is it really going to be that? This isn't Mythic raiding, right? I don't think it's going to be that complicated. But it should also be powerful enough that players can surprise us with their creations or drill down to get the tiniest details just right. The gamut of decor options spans not just the cultures of Azeroth, but the many expansions of World of Warcraft as well. Deeply social. World of Warcraft is more fun with other players, and housing should be no different. While players can enjoy housing purely on their own, its systems are designed at a fundamental level to encourage interacting, playing, and progressing with friends, neighbors, guilds, and the wider community in a meaningful way. Neighbors is the biggest one standing out there. So it's not just going to be you in isolation. Long-lasting journey. Housing is being built as an evergreen addition to the game with its own roadmap, reaching across multiple patches and into future expansions. Housing isn't something players should expect to quote-unquote finish, but instead continually look forward to the next housing release, be it new content or systems. This is a long-term commitment for us as developers and offers players rewards all along the way. So it's not like Garrison's not getting abandoned. It's going to be constantly iterated on. It's evergreen. It's like the new Mythic Plus system for uber casuals and RPers is what it's looking like so far. One more important note, even though it's not an explicit pillar, wide adoption is a primary consideration for us as well. Most players should want a house in Azeroth, and if a player wants a house in Azeroth, they can have a house in Azeroth. Furthermore, housing is being designed to scale with the player's interest. If someone wants to spend dozens of hours a week on their house, that's great. If they're only interested in coming and going once or twice a month, that's great too. So they're not going to make it like Azerite farming where it's like mandatory repetitive stuff over and over that you have to do likely for the rest of the game, but it's going to have a decent amount of grinding if you really want to pursue that type of content and grinding. So trying to have your cake and eat it too with that paragraph. Zoning in on home. We've seen a lot of discussion and speculation from the community on where players will be able to have their houses. We decided early on that there would be 2 housing zones available at launch, one for Alliance and one for Horde, with more possible places to live in the future. The Alliance zone takes inspiration from Elven Forest, with touches of Westfall and Duskwood, and the Horde's inspired by Durotar, its coastline, and Ashar. I think those two thematically make the most sense, especially with Classic WoW coming out. These are going to be the most familiar, especially for anybody that might be intrigued in trying retail. This seems to me like a no-brainer place to start, but obviously there needs to be more in the future. There are 2 main reasons for this. Having many housing zones conflicts with the second pillar of designing as a feature to be deeply social. In a world where players can live in many different zones, they become increasingly spread out, and even with aggressive sharding, the chance of seeing other players, much less interacting with them, drops quickly. Putting it bluntly, zones are a lot of work. We'd much rather do a great job with a small number of zones than do a passable job on a large number, or come up with solutions that take the player out of the world into their own personal instance of a zone. So I really don't want it to be like garrisons. We chose these as our starting points because of how iconic they are for their respective factions and how much they feel like home to so many players already. We're excited for what we will be able to accomplish with the two zones, and we'll be sharing more of what this means in a future update, outfitting your home. So we've got the Alliance view of it as well. Nice little kind of, Goldshire in theme. They got instruments. Oh, can I put a saxophone? Is there going to be a saxophone that I can hang up on the wall? This one looks much cleaner than the Horde one. No flame to the Horde, or maybe flame to the Horde. But these drawings are very, very nice. Let's see here. Similarly, there have been discussions in the community on whether housing will be pay to play, win, or not. Oh, this is a big one. Along with other conversations around real-world money. We've been very aligned in our internal conversations that housing is designed to be primarily player first and not revenue first. It's only primarily. There's some revenue. Housing will offer hundreds and hundreds of decorations and house customizations via in-game rewards, but will also offer a small number of items in the cash shop as well. So just straight up in the cash shop. It's not even that they're just necessarily going to be erroneous amounts of gold. This is comparable to how transmogs and pets are currently handled in game versus the shop. We want to allow players to have as many options as possible for creating their perfect home in Azeroth, but they also need to be able to make some money. I mean, the Brutosaur mount pulled in $15 million. So to think that they were not going to put any microtransactions on this, I think that would have been foolish, although it seems like they're going to be at least somewhat conservative with it, similar to how they have been with mounts and pets, which I think is just going to be what happens, right? They're a AAA game company. They have massive, teams and employees that they need to make sure can all get paid and stuff like that. So there's an element of that. I know the whole debate of like, oh, you have to sub for it and all this other stuff, but wow, it's a super expensive game. I think this is just going to happen no matter what. But at least it seems like they're not going to only, hopefully, have pay to win. A home for everyone. As a part of our focus on wide adoption, we wanted to ensure that housing is available to everyone. If you want a house, you can have a house. No exorbitant requirements or high purchase costs, no lotteries, and no onerous upkeep. And if your subscription lapses, don't worry, your house doesn't get repossessed. Your houses are also shared amongst your warband, with your different characters being able to come and go as you see fit. So your orc character can hang out in your alliance house without a problem. Well, how does that work with the neighbors, though? What if they don't want orcs in their neighborhood? Housing rewards are also shared across your warband, so you'll be able to use your decor collection no matter which character earns it. Furthermore, it's not just warbands that cross factional lines, but friendships as well. So be able to live in or visit your friends' or guildmates' houses and their neighborhoods with minimal restrictions. So you can make a neighborhood with your guild regarding faction. For example, while it's not possible for your human character to buy a house in the Horde zone, your troll character in the same warband can, and then your human can use it as if it were their own. These seem like really weird limitations if you can just bring the character over anyways. I don't know if that's just me, but it just seems a little bit strange. Will you be my neighbor? Dude, this art is so good. Just a little cross of like what it's going to look like for Durotar and all the little homes that you can possibly have. This thing looks sick. Before we go, we want to mention the concept of neighborhoods as a small tease. Houses are organized into roughly 50 plot neighborhoods. So is this going to work like Final Fantasy where they said it's going to be really cheap to get it, but what if you get a neighborhood that doesn't have anybody in it that you want? How are you going to choose the neighborhood? How does that work? Does your neighborhood just change? Does it get sharded? I feel like these are a lot of questions that I have for it. Letting players live next to each other, work together, and share in the rewards of being part of the neighborhood. Neighborhoods are instanced, but crucially also persistent. So your neighbors can be your neighbors for years to come. But how do you pick them? You don't get to pick them just like IRL. Or until one of you moves. Oh, can you move it to a different neighborhood? Neighborhoods are also come in two flavors. Public neighborhoods, which the game servers are responsible for creating as needed and maintaining, or private neighborhoods created by groups of friends or guilds to inhabit, progress, and customize together. So you can have solo queue neighborhoods, and you can have friends and family only neighborhoods So you can do it whichever one you want. If you don't got any friends, the game's going to give you friends. You're not going to probably know if they're AI or not, but there'll be people there. And then if you do have them, you don't need to have any strangers messing up whatever you're going on with your neighborhood parties. So while an individual player can have a house, a community can have a neighborhood. So this is a nice little in-between of like guild halls, right? Because you could have a guild neighborhood. And then everybody gets to customize their own house in that neighborhood. I think this is a nice happy medium between both of those desired options. This is just an initial look at the blueprint we've been working on for housing. There's a lot more ground to cover and details to get into, and we look forward to your thoughts and feedback as we share more articles in the future. So obviously there's going to be more news. Make sure to smash the subscribe button. This is the breakdown of it. I think that this is looking a lot better so far. I think obviously the construction of the house and how customizable it is and how they incentivize people to actually need to go in and out of their house and their neighborhood are going to be questions that are still up in the air moving forward, so that either it doesn't just end up being a ghost town or you're just stuck there permanently and you can't actually exist in the rest of the persistent world, which is going to be the most difficult balance of this. But they're definitely taking a lot more strides than I anticipated. I thought it was just going to be Garrisons 2.0, but this concept of neighborhoods is obviously pushing it a lot past those limits. So this has definitely got me intrigued. Curious to see where it develops from this point. This is again just the first look, so it's going to be a lot more fleshed out, I think, as time moves on. And other than that, thank you guys very much for watching the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown, and I will see you in the next one.